In this video, we are going to create a new contract, which is the second step of project setup. You do want to make sure that before you create a new contract, you have created all the necessary firms in your firm setup first. From the contracts module, you'll make sure that you have no filters on this list to make sure that you're seeing all of the contracts that have been created in your system. You're most interested in seeing what the last number used was. You're going to use the very next number. So the last one we used was 1034. Our next contract number will be 1035. Go to Create New Item. The form that opens does not auto number in our system, so we will put that next number will be 1035. If you type in your number and this form populates with information, that means that number's already been used. It should be blank. We want to be careful to name our project the same way that our customer has named it. We also want to avoid using any punctuation in our project names. Ampersands are okay. Apostrophes, commas, periods, hyphens are not good. The problem that occurs is if somebody comes to look for that job and search for it in a list and they don't know that something should be punctuated, it actually may not come up for them depending on where that punctuation is located in the title. So we're going to match the customer's naming as much as possible. When the customer calls later about a project or emails somebody later about a project and it's years down the road and they're calling it something completely different than what we're calling it, it's very difficult to find that project in our system. So sometimes they have crazy long names, but just for the job naming in our system, we'll want to make sure that we match their contract. The main department for the project was determined by estimating, so we want to stick with what they've decided is considered the main department. You may have multiple departments, that's fine. On the contract, we'll just use the main department. In this case, it's HVAC Department 20. You can also F4 here to see a list of available departments. And your customer, you're going to want to F4 there and use your wildcard asterisk or star to search for the customer name. You want to use, when you're using a wildcard, use the most unique part of the customer's name. So I wouldn't want to search by John because then I get this really long list of hits for John. But since my customer's name is John Irwin, then searching by Irwin actually gets me a shorter list. The pay terms are going to default based on how the firm is set up in our system. For WIP jobs, our pay terms should always be, if you F4, it's going to be the 10th of the second month. So it's pay term 00. The retainage is dictated by the contract, so you'll need to get that information from your contract. In this case, it's 10%. And the bill day is also dictated by the contract. And in this case, the contract dictates the 25th. Our tax code, we want to always set it up as taxable unless we have an exemption certificate. And that can be a resale or just tax exempt. If you don't have that and you set it up as exempt, assuming that it's going to be exempt, we may get down the line 2 or 3 billings before we realize we should have been charging tax. And it's harder to fix later. So if we charge them tax on the first bill and we're not supposed to, they'll let us know. So don't put exempt in here unless you have the tax certificate in hand. We don't interface taxes. You can leave that box alone. And the default bill type is always progress, even if you are doing a T&M type bill. If we're doing a T&M but we haven't set up T&M templates, then we don't want to use this bill type. So we can bill T&M from a progress billing. We don't do work complete maximum retention, so you can leave this whole box alone. Your contract status is grayed out, and it will stay grayed out until it's been interfaced, so you don't need to change that. Your contract start month would be the month that you sold the job. So in this case, that was January. And the month closed is going to be blank until we complete the contract. Your projected completion date is in your contract or work order. A lot of times it'll list a date in there. The PM can change this date if that changes for any reason. But go ahead and set up the job with what's in the contract. In this case, it's 12/7/17. And we don't put days in contract or standard item code, so you can skip that. Your next tab is the Job Billing Info tab. You're going to put a processing group that is your project manager's bill processing group. So F4 for a list. The project manager on this is Travis. Your customer reference number is the work order, PO number, or subcontract number that your customer has listed on their contract. You'll want to list that here. It will print on your bill, and it makes it easier for your customer to associate your billing with the correct job. Report retainage at item level. You will check that box. You won't check bill on completion unless we had some type of agreement that was the only time that we could bill, is when we had delivered. Your receivable type is going to be construction. There, you can F4 here for a list, and the other two are for service. So you'll just use the construction. We don't have a miscellaneous distribution code or a T&M template at this time, and we don't have a T&M flat bill amount for our WIP jobs at this time. We don't have the job billing T&M limit option for now. And the rounding option defaults to round billing and retainage, and a lot of times that's going to be what your customer is doing, but if you find out after your first payment that what they're paying doesn't match what you're billing, it's probably a rounding issue, and this will need to be changed to match them. Your customer billing address defaults from the firm contact file, and you can override that by entering billing information in here. If your customer doesn't want the bills mailed, it's a good idea to go ahead and put that information in here. It will print on the bill and remind whoever's processing the bill that it doesn't get mailed. So you could put email only here in the address, and you can use the additional address line as well to maybe list an email address, or if they specifically require you to say pay application in the subject line, you can list that information here for easy access at bill time. Any additional information that's required as far as architect, contract, for description, all those things can be listed down here. We don't use these very much. That completes the initial contract setup. That's performed usually by the project administrator or assistant project manager. The next video will describe how to enter the SOV, and that's performed by the project manager.